Hello, how's everyone doing? Hope everyone is well. Making a quick video to talk to y'all about this Infinity G37X model. X meaning all-wheel drive. It's a coupe, two-door coupe. Holla at your boy. I like it. It's a nice one. It came in for a tune-up. This has the twin intakes, so you have to remove the intake manifold. And there's some little bolts on the backside here. 1, 2, 3, 4 that you want to remove. You want to remove your plugs. You want to remove your hoses. The bolt that's hiding all the way in the back. And then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts, 6 hiding there, plus the one more in the front. You got your 2 hoses coming in here. On each throttle body, you got your 2 coolant lines coming in. You got your sensor there. That's pretty much all you're detaching. What you're gonna need underneath is this, see if I can pick it out with the gloves. It's a little rubber gasket that sits in here. I'm wearing the gloves, so I can't get it out right now. I use a little pick to get it out. So this gasket you're gonna replace. And what we're doing on it is a tune-up. We're doing a set of spark plugs. So as you can see here, we got some options at O'Reilly's. I'm going to show y'all some prices. O'Reilly's is my favorite store. Feel free to shop wherever you want to shop. This is for the G37 2013 model. I did put the proper specs in there, the X model, even though they're all the same engine. Auto lights, you never put auto lights in a freaking JDM car. NGK laser iridiums is an option, and you see that's not a cheap plug. It doesn't give me the option to pick it up in the store. It forces me to have them shipped. And so I'm going to probably go ahead and have those shipped, $32. I'm going to compare the price at the dealership and see what they cost just to pick them up at the local dealership compared to that $32.99 each. Then you have a Bosch option, which is cheaper. That's more for European cars. I don't recommend you put that in there. Now, the Denso Iridium is actually what it comes with factory. And I think, no, it's not letting me pick it up in the store either. So, yeah, it's making me ship that one too. It's not giving me the option to pick up in the store. But that's a lot cheaper than the NGK, the Denso. You have your Champion, which is more of a Chrysler plug, another basic NGK plug, which is pretty cheap. We're not going to put that in there. So if you were a cheap butt, you would go with that NGK. Champion is more for Chrysler. The Denso is the factory option for $18.99. Bosch is for Germans. We're going to ignore that one. This NGK laser iridium spark plug is the upgrade, what we want to put in there, even though it's the most expensive. And auto light is something used more in like Chevrolets, GMs, stuff like that. It's not what we want to put in this car. So we have either the NGK $32.99 or the Denso option. And this is just each, as you can see, each. So for one, if we want to upgrade, it's up to the customer. I'll discuss this with the customer before I move forward. But let's see, I think I had this in my cart already. We'll go to the cart and it'll load up in there. Go to cart. There we go. Whoops, looks like we're changing our oil. Sorry, I got gloves on, y'all, and I think I might have hit something I shouldn't have hit. Sorry, the page is currently unavailable. Okay. I think it's like $40-something with tax each, like 41 and change with tax each. So times that times 6, and that's what you're spending on spark plugs, plus the cost of the lower intake gasket. As I said, these are the spark plugs that came with it. I'll show you all 3 of them on this side. This is the, see if we can get that to focus. The iridium plug. It is a Denso FXE24HR11. It's an Denso Iridium plug. So that one for $18.99 is the plug that we were talking about. That is the factory plug. So I'm going to show you inside the engine here, guys. And inside this engine, I've already looked in it very carefully, and you can see there's not a lot of gunk build up inside of there. There's it looks pretty clean actually. This motor only has 68,000 miles, and it's not really bad in there. So I'm not gonna invest into removing the lower intake manifold and getting into doing more work in that sense. If I seen carbon buildup inside there in the valves, I would be recommending the customer removes this and goes that route. The valve cover gaskets run from back here to about right here, and again, they're not leaking. I didn't see any oil inside of the spark plug tube cylinder where the spark plug goes. I saw no oil in there, and so I'm not going to recommend any valve cover gaskets because of the tube seal leaking either. So these valve cover gaskets are holding up. I'm a big believer in preventative maintenance, but I'm also pretty adamant on if it's not broke, don't fix it. So we're just going to leave that alone. And I did also invest in making some time to looking at this on a LCD screen, and you can see it has a little camera, and anything you point it at, you see it on your LCD screen. It does have the light on it, so there's your light. So anyways, I've stuck this inside of the spark plug, stuck it down inside of the intake, got a really close look at everything there, made sure that everything inside of the engine checks out. It's a great little tool from Milwaukee. I always take that before I buy a car and get a real good look inside at everything I'm doing. So here's your 3 spark plugs for this side. Now keep in mind that these spark plugs are not your typical 5/8 spark plugs. These are a 9/16 spark plug is the size socket you want to get. And this is a regular socket. It's not a spark plug socket. So it won't grab the spark plug and pull it out. It doesn't have the magnet or the rubber suction in it. So what I used is a regular metal magnet tool. So this right here, I would loosen them with the 9/16 regular socket, stick this in there, grab it, and pull it right out with this. I wanted to talk a little bit about what it entails to remove this intake for those of you that are going to attempt this at home. Remember I showed you 3 bolts on the back of the intake? Don't mind my finger. This car took a chunk of skin out of me, and I got it all bandaged up under the glove. Lost a lot of blood, had no choice but to bandage it up. So be careful working on these things. 68,000 miles, nobody had ever disturbed this but me. Everything here is being moved for the first time from factory. So remember I told you we had the 3 bolts. We had 1, 2, 3 there, and then you had your other one over here, right? You had a couple hoses and a couple sensors, and then this will just push off there. You have the screw on the back side, you have the other ones that bolt in here all the way across, and you have the one in the front. We have your 2 hoses there and there that tie into the front. Your harness is clipped into the valve cover. I like to remove it. I don't like to stress it by having it clipped in, and I like to do clean work. I don't like to break clips on people's engines and do stuff like that, so I'm real particular about making sure I remove all those things carefully. You see this is your fuel pressure line coming into the fuel regulator, and it's kind of just barely clears the spark plug a little bit. And then you have your PCV valve under here. You see that? That's like a threaded PCV valve into the valve cover. And I'm going to go ahead and inquire about that at the dealership too. It's plastic, and you got to be careful when you remove this stuff. The hose is moving, but the valve isn't. So I'm going to spray a little lubricant in there, let it sit overnight, and then attempt to see what that PCV valve, that's a positive crank ventilation valve for most of you that don't understand the abbreviation of PCV valve. And then I obviously looked inside all these spark plug tube holes, and everything looked good here. I looked all the way down with the camera, and every cylinder and the top of every cylinder looks clean and the way it should. I inspected all hoses while I was here for any cracking. These are starting to harden up a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. They'll still work. Then you have your two hoses here that run coolant into your throttle body, and I checked those. Those were fine too. You had a breather hose that comes in here. You have another EGR emissions hose coming over here. There's a few little hoses you got to detach. I went ahead and unplugged the mass airflow sensors, thinking I was going to remove the air box, but then I changed my mind and decided to leave them there. I did remove the breather piping here, and then I obviously the throttle bodies on both sides. Now this little, it's like a little electronic solenoid check valve thing, two-way check valve. So I did remove that from the back, and then these bolts over here, the two nuts and those bolts were part of the bracketry back here that I already discussed. At my coils, I got them in order. I know that this is coming from the front of the engine to the middle of the engine to the back of the engine on this side, and then in the other, I like to put them back exactly where they were. The same we have on this side. You have your boot. On this side, we have the PCV piping, breather piping, and then again I have my coils over here on this side from the front of the engine to the middle to the back. This over here is probably going to be the hardest coil to disconnect because of its positioning where it's buried back in here. There's not a lot of room to get to the clip on the back side over here, this clip that you have to push down. There's not a lot of room to get to push that in and then release it and break it loose back without physically breaking the plug. So that was probably the hardest one out of all of them to release. Then here again the hoses for the throttle body. So I have them to the side over here, so they're out of the way. That's pretty much the breakdown of this job, y'all. It's really not, I wouldn't say it's like a level A technician where you got to be a master tech in order to handle this job, but I would definitely not try it. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a level A technician job. It's more of somebody that's at least a level B technician. A level A technician could probably do this really easy, but a level B technician can handle it also. A rookie or a novice would probably be better off paying somebody to do this. If you're not careful, this is an expensive engine. You could break stuff. You know, I normally put paper towels or shop rags inside of these ports for the intake, just to make sure no trash or anything falls in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to the added measures of blowing all the, see if I can get this to zoom in, all the dirt and everything that builds up down in there, leaves and dirt, everything that builds up down in there in the fuel injector galleyway, whatever, however you want to refer to it. This phone's acting up the camera, so you're not getting a good focus. But yeah, so before I blow all that out, and just because this is going to sit overnight while I get parts, I don't want anything to fall in there. So I will take the added measure of stuffing all that with either paper towels or shop rags to make sure that nothing falls in there. And you know, you just got to be real careful when you work on stuff. Attention to detail is very important. A lot of this stuff is plastic. It's fragile. It's brittle. It'll break easily if you're not careful how you manipulate it. So for that, a rookie technician would probably be a little more rougher and not careful and not have the experience on how to break stuff loose that's been sitting for a while and end up having some broken parts on them. You don't want to lean on anything on the engine. There's a lot of plastic on the top of these engines. You lean on a hose, you lean on a part of the harness the wrong way. You could end up having electrical shorts. You could end up having cracks in hoses. It's just for those reasons, you want at least a level B technician that's had some experience working on intakes and doing jobs like this. Working on this. What's the last thing I want to talk about? When I clean the intake, you want to be careful. If you do decide to go the route, I'm going to discuss this with the owner of the car. If he wants me to go ahead and do a throttle body cleaning, you remove these bolts right here, these 4 bolts, and you clean everything on the back side of this throttle body. It doesn't look horrible, like where it's seeping through, but you can tell that there is some carbon slowly building up behind that butterfly on this throttle body. And because this is a drive-by-wire system, the old ones where they were cable actuated, you could just flip it open manually and reach in and clean behind it. On these, you want to make sure you unbolt and remove and clean it carefully from the backside without touching this, because this is programmed to the computer, and then you got to go through the whole relearning process, and you could actually damage inside by forcing it. So you want to be careful with that. I will remove this sensor, and if I hope that the customer approves removing these throttle bodies, and there's 2 of them, there's 1 on each side, so therefore we would remove them, and then they would have a gasket, an O-ring gasket similar to the gasket that I just showed you on the underside. And I would like to spray everything out and clean it out, get all the gunk. There's not much gunk in this intake, to be honest with you. It probably wouldn't hurt it to put it back, but my grandfather always said, if you're gonna work on it, make it look like you worked on it, right? And I'll try to show you inside of it. It's time for a phone upgrade, y'all. This iPhone 8 ain't cutting the mustard with this camera. So you can see there is a little bit of buildup in there. It's not horrible, but there is a little bit of cleaning that could serve it well to do. And I'll pull this rubber seal out and replace this rubber seal. And I'll have all these throttle bodies removed. Spray in, spray in, spray in. Get everything cleaned out real good. Put all the new gaskets. Get these spark plugs. I'm going to recommend we go with the upgraded NGK spark plugs versus the factory replacement Denzos. That'll be up to the customer to decide which route he wants to go with those, but I'm gonna push towards going with the upgraded NGK. They make a much better product than Denso does. The other thing is cleaning the inside of these ports. You want to be very careful. You want to stick something in there, to like a shop towel, paper towel, to where when you do clean this upper surface, nothing falls in there and gets down in there and hurts the valves, scores the inside of the cylinder on that valve in the head. So you want to clean all this up lightly, scuff it with sandpaper and clean it and spray it off and blow everything out. But you want this nice and sealed with good paper towel shoved in there, to where when you pull the paper towel out too, you want to be quick. You want to blow around it first, get as much as you can out with the blower, with the shop blower, and then when you pull it out, you want to be quick, pull it out, because if you pull it out slow, sometimes what the towel caught can get down in there. So there'll be some cleaning involved in the top of the engine, but I don't recommend doing the valve covers. And then it'll just be reassemble, put this thing back together, and get it back in the customer's hands. I really like the interior in this car. It's like a 370Z with a fancier upgraded interior is how I would describe this car. The 370Z is a sporty car. This is too. It's a G37, same thing, same motor. This is the X model, so you get the all-wheel drive benefit. And I really do enjoy these cars. I think Nissan's been making this engine for a while, and they're very good engines. So I highly recommend to anyone in the market looking to buy one of these. They're very reliable, well-proven vehicles, and the maintenance on them isn't that bad. He's at 68,000 miles. Technically, he should have done this at 50, at 100, at 150, at 200, and so on. But you can see even at 68,000 miles, it doesn't look too bad. So we'll do it now. He'll probably run it like this until 150 before we have to worry about doing it again. Anyways, thank you for your time. Oh, one last thing before I let y'all go. Highly recommend you run this thing without the engine cover. Why? These engine covers do nothing. They're just aesthetic pieces. They don't want you to see the engine. They want to conceal it. They want to hide it from you. They don't want you to look at it. They put the padding underneath because they know this engine runs hot. You imagine you going around everywhere with that engine cover over your face, suffocating you. And mechanically, it has no purpose other than it's actually bad because it retains unnecessary heat on the engine. And by removing it, you allow the engine to breathe better. And then on the other hand, also, it's an aesthetic piece. That is its purpose. It's supposed to look nice. So the day you sell it, you want it to be pristine and look nice. And this one has some nice features. It has the fake chrome here going on. It has a nice little design here. So I would recommend this gets cleaned and put up in a garage, in an attic somewhere out of the way, and just run the engine with it removed. And then when you go to sell it one day, put it back on. That way you're not retaining all that unnecessary heat on the engine, and you're allowing the engine to have a little more air ventilation to breathe better. The coils are not going to have all that additional heat, all the hoses, the wiring to the harness. All that is being covered up, and all the heat that this engine is building and creating is being retained there instead of easily vented because that big plastic cover is retaining it all there. We do live in Florida here, y'all. This is the Sunshine State. If we lived up north, avoid what I'm saying. Don't worry about it. But in the Sunshine State, you live in this warmer climate. Take those stupid plastic covers off. They're just aesthetic pieces. Put them away somewhere and let the engine run bare naked, how they say, and have a little more breathability. I don't want to yap too much. I'm a talker, I get it, but I just wanted to point out some valid points here. So I'm going to be recommending to this customer that we actually don't reinstall the engine cover, and he just puts it away in his garage somewhere. It'll stay in pristine condition for the day he does decide to sell it. Then we would put it back on in the meantime after this tune-up. Hopefully he'll take my advice and run without the engine cover. Yeah, I think I pretty much covered everything else. We're going to look into doing the transmission on it. I'll do a separate video on that because this video is already getting too long, servicing the transmission. So the next step would be to jack it up and get underneath and take a look and inspect everything under there. Anyways, thanks for watching this part of the video. God bless. Good luck. Be safe, y'all. Till the next one.